Do not adjust your television. What you are about to experience is stranger than fiction.
Hey there, strangers.
Hello.
And welcome to Stranger Than Fiction. I'm your co-host, Devin.
I am Heidi.
We are the duo behind Channeling Spirits. Is that where you were going to go?
Yeah, I
and
was.
say
And
that
then
you're the voice of Channeling Spirits?
I changed my mind.
You are the voice. I am the writer and editor. If you're not familiar with Channeling Spirits, we like to cover all things spooky.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of Ghostbusters stuff.
A lot of great Ghostbusters. They're spooky.
Yeah, they're spooky.
Yeah, they're...
Spooky dooky.
I don't think that's going to catch on. We also like to cover urban legends. I don't know. What would you consider Bloody Mary?
A child's game?
I guess. And we will get into, if you're not familiar with Stranger in Fiction, what we do is we cover supernatural or unusual or paranormal events. And a lot of times we'll discuss a movie or a television episode that applies to that, and then what the origins of that, what the actual truth behind it. So we'll get to what you might find a little bit unusual as far as where Bloody Mary came from.
Mm-hmm. And we're not talking about the drink.
That would have been fun and a little bit shorter.
Gross. Spicy.
Spicy? What? Have you ever had a Bloody Mary?
I don't like it.
But have you had one?
Yeah, I don't like it. It was a spicy.
I don't think you had a
spicy
Bloody Mary.
meatball.
Nope. I've ordered a Bloody Mary. It was pretty good. But I like V8. You don't like V8.
Nah, not for me, but that's okay.
I don't want you to answer now, but I do want to ask if you've played Bloody Mary. So just kind of keep that in mind if you actually played it and had a fun experience. We'll both share if we have Bloody Mary stories not related to the alcohol drink. Well, today we are going to be covering Supernatural Season 1, Episode 5. We have gone over the first 4 episodes of Supernatural in previous podcasts. We're probably not going to go through every single episode just because they have a tendency to sometimes focus a lot on like angels and demons as they get further. But that first season is really good because
it's diverse.
Yeah, it gives a lot of monsters of the week. And this episode, titled Bloody Mary, discusses the urban legend spirit haunting game of Bloody Mary. So without further ado, let's get into
Heidi's dissection.
Okay, so it starts off with some kids playing Truth or Dare. Like 3 girls having a sleepover, and they're like, okay, I dare you to say Bloody Mary in the mirror 3 times. And the other girl's like, that's a stupid dare, Janice. That's not, her name's not Janice, but it is now. And so she's like, okay, fine, I'll go do it. And so she goes into the room and she says Bloody Mary 3 times in the mirror, and nothing happens at first. And then you hear banging on the door, and the girl in there screams, and it's just her friends being mean, banging on the door. And so nothing happens, and there's lots of mirrors in the house, you'll notice. So a bunch of mirrors going around.
It's like Chekhov's mirror.
Yeah. And so the dad comes down. He's like, can you guys not? I'm trying to sleep. And then they're like, okay, Dad.
Sorry, Daddy. Sorry, Mr. Shoemaker.
And so he goes upstairs.
I don't think they all say, okay, Dad.
No, only one of them is the daughter. And so he goes upstairs, takes some pills, and as he's looking in the mirror...
I did not see him taking pills.
Yeah, he definitely is taking some pills. He was like, F these kids, I gotta go to bed.
I cannot handle this. It's a Saturday night. I'm not going to deal with that.
Yeah, well, single dad with 3 girls in his house currently, so that's a lot.
And an older daughter?
Yes, so we'll get there. So Dad looks in the mirror, and you can see he's got like scratches on his face, and then his eyes start bleeding. It was like
claw marks?
Yeah, kind of. It looked like his like veins are being drained, kind of. Ooh. And then he starts like bleeding from his eyes, and then it flashes to the older sister coming home, and she's like, "What's up, dorks?"
Hey, geek.
And she goes upstairs.
I really enjoy whoever wrote this clearly got how teenagers talk. Mm-hmm. Like the teenage girl's like, I'll see you later, freak.
Yeah.
And it's like, smell you later, Janice. Like, how the kids of 2005 talked.
Yes. And so she goes upstairs and finds blood everywhere, her father's blood, and she sees that he's dead. So that's unfortunate. And so we shift to Sam and Dean.
Sammy.
And they hear about this, obviously. And Sam's been having dreams about
Nightmares.
his girlfriend dying, as she did in the first episode, on the ceiling in flames. So that sucks. Anyway,
Just like their mom, if
Yes.
you didn't see the pilot and didn't want to watch our episode covering that. But yeah, so there's some strange occurrence that's been obviously haunting him, understandably.
yeah,
He's
it
got a little
happened
guilt.
like a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Sam and Dean are like, all right, let's investigate this. So Sam bribes the corpse guy, the mortician, the corpse guy. That's what I wrote down. I couldn't think of the word.
What do you do for a living? I'm a corpse guy.
Corpse guy. So
My wife, she's a corpse gal.
So he bribes the mortician to let them look at the body, because Dean tries to like charm his way in, like he normally does. He's like, yeah, we're grad students, and this guy said we could come see
And
it.
the corpse
he's
guy is
like,
just
nah.
like, dude, give me money.
Yeah, and so Sam gives him like $500.
Does he really?
Yeah, to let him go see this dead body. So anyway, they go see it.
I'm really
and
creeped out what else he allows if he's that easily bribed.
right?
Follow me?
They go see the body, and there's like eyeballs. His eyeballs are gone, and there's like blood coming from there. And so yeah, that's
And
unfortunate.
they're like, what could have caused this? And he's like, I don't know, a stroke. I'm like, yeah, strokes often cause exploding eyeballs.
Yes, exploding eyeballs, the new medical diagnosis.
From corpse guy.
Anyway, so then they find out who the dead guy is, and they find out that there's a wake, and so they go to the wake, and
Which was my favorite part.
the door's just open.
Yeah, like every wake you've ever been to, they just leave the front door open. Two strange men walk in. No one says,
Who are you?
hi, can we help you? Who do you know? Know what like family members are whispering, like, who are those guys
They're
with?
in
Like,
mourning, okay?
No one's ever seen these people. They've walked into our house, and they just like beeline it straight for the daughters.
Yeah, the daughters, both of them.
Because
Which,
they know.
Also, how did they know who she was?
That's
like,
what I was
they
gonna
don't
ask.
they don't clarify that.
It's not like they like. Anyway, so they've broken into this person's wake.
Yeah, and they go over and they are like, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear about your dad." And the little girl, the daughter's like, "It's my fault." And he's like, "Why would you say that?" And he's like, I said Bloody Mary 3 times in the mirror." And the older sister's like, "You're dumb. That's stupid. That's not your fault. Like, stop." And Dean's like, "Well, your dad didn't say Bloody Mary 3 times, so clearly that's not what it was."
But they're also like weirdly like, yeah, it's definitely like Bloody Mary. Maybe it is kind of your fault. Like they're weirdly encouraging, not like supportive at all of like, no, that's ridiculous. Like, what
Yeah.
if she just has survivor's guilt and is a little delusional?
Yeah, truth. And so they have a random blonde girl. Later found out her name is Charlie. It took like 80% of the episode for me not to know her name.
Because there's two blonde girls,
Yes.
right? And I thought, well, we'll get there. But
You thought
there's
they
two
were
of
the same
them.
person.
I did.
So anyway, this girl, Charlie, is a friend of theirs, and she goes upstairs because Sam and Dean have wandered off, and she's like, "What the hell are you doing up here?" And they're like,
We had to go to the bathroom.
we both had to pee at the same time.
Which I like
Holding
that
hands.
the daughter's friend
Right?
is doing a better job policing the household in the wake than anyone else.
Well,
Like,
they're in mourning. Their father is
okay,
dead.
not everyone in the family is. They would notice some strange men wandering around the house.
Maybe not. I
They're
don't
so
know.
attractive, they just get away with it.
So true. They bring that up later.
Do they?
Yeah. So then anyway, they're like, "Hey, like we think that something weird's happening here. Like maybe Bloody Mary did it."
Would
and
you
she's
say
like,
there's something strange and it don't look good?
So, damn it, Devin.
Sometimes bad things just happen.
So the blonde girl finds them.
Yeah,
and is
yeah.
like,
okay.
what are you doing?
Yeah, and they're like, "Oh, we think it might be Bloody Mary. Like this is serious. We don't want it to happen to anyone else." And she's like, "Okay." And,
She's weirdly.
and Sam's like, "Here's my card. Call me if anything happens." And she's like, "Okay."
I do like that a lot of these early episodes, like just from a writing standpoint, like people are pretty easy to get on board. They're like, oh, it's a woman in white, and they're like, okay.
I mean, it's one thing for my sister to believe this crap. She's 12. But you?
Yeah.
Like we just sure,
I
it's Bloody
believe.
Mary.
And so the blonde girl is driving home from the wake, and she calls her friend, who is also blonde, And I think her name was Jillian, maybe? I don't know.
What?
And so
I thought there was a Donna. Did I make up Donna?
You must be Donna, right?
Yeah.
No, Donna's the name of the oldest daughter. So there's a lot of girls in this episode. So the blonde girl, Charlie calls her friend who is also blonde, and she's like, yeah, I don't know. Like, maybe he did die from saying Bloody Mary. And she's like, that's stupid, you freak. And she's like, I'm going to say Bloody Mary 3 times in the mirror while I'm on the phone with you. And then she goes and does it, and nothing happens, of course. And she screams and like she freaks out her friend who's driving.
Yeah, you like don't see her, but there's like a scream on the other end of the phone. You're like, oh, Bloody Mary got you. And then she's like, ha ha ha, freak.
You're such a freak. I'll call you tomorrow.
Yeah, and then she's like, I'll call you tomorrow, and she hangs up. Then, of course, she's looking in a different mirror later, and blood is coming down her eyes, just like with the dad. But this time, it's her own reflection talking to her, and it's saying, like, you did it. You killed him. It's your fault. And so then she dies.
Of a stroke,
yeah,
I guess.
And so, anyway, so then the blonde girl calls Sam and tells that her friend just died because she said Bloody Mary 3 times in the mirror. And the blonde lets Sam and Dean into the dead girl's house. Somehow she gets in, goes to her room, and lets them in from like the window. What? Where are this dead girl's parents? What?
They also died, just like Charlie's parents. This whole community is just, it's like Children of the Corn.
Hey, free house. And so they scan the room for evidence with their like early 2000s video camera, which is hilarious to me. And they're like, oh, we should get a black light random. And so then they see a black light.
Black lights
on
are
the
like
mirror.
a go-to paranormal investigative equipment.
It's true. And
that's
so,
how you find ectoplasm.
And so they see in black light, there's a handprint on the mirror where she died. And in writing, it says Carrie Bryman. And so they looked at Charlie and they're like, do you know who Carrie Bryman is? And she's like, I have no idea. And so they look it up, and it's actually a little boy that was apparently hit by a car. They described the car to her, and she's like, oh, that was Jill's car. Jill's her name, not Jillian. And they're like, oh, that was Jill's car. So like Jill killed this little boy because it was a hit and run. So that's why Bloody Mary killed her.
Which is fine, but this whole thing is like, We'll get there.
I got a lot more.
I know.
Okay.
I know. It's
and
just
so
absurd. Like,
then
of course.
So then they go to look at the mirror in the dad's house where he died, and
they've broken into another house.
Yes, and they see that the wife's name is on it. And they talk to the daughter, and they're like, oh, what happened? She was like, oh, she overdosed from sleeping pills. Like, it was accidental. But obviously, the dad killed the mom.
So what pharmacist is like, hey, you know how your wife had this prescription of sleeping pills? I'm just going to keep giving them to you to sleep at night?
I don't know. Maybe
or
he like crushed them up and put them in her water. Or maybe she was a drug addict and he just let her have them.
Then the corpse guy would have been like, there's obviously some narcotics or barbiturates in her bloodstream that killed her.
No, that's what they say.
I
but
know,
they don't
but
say
like,
who did it.
But, well, obviously it's the dad taking sleeping pills. But I'm saying, who were they given to?
I don't know.
Whose prescription is it? This would have been a very easy
Unsolved
murder case. Like, the cops didn't even try. They're like, oh, yeah, she overdosed on sleeping pills. She doesn't have any sleeping pill prescription, but her husband does. Wonder who could have killed her.
Bloody Mary.
So it's pretty much implied that people that are being killed by Bloody Mary have killed someone, and it hasn't, like, the truth hasn't been uncovered.
Yeah, like she's a vengeful spirit.
Yeah.
And then leaving the solution in black light.
Yeah.
Just in case anybody wants to look that up. She's a very nice spirit.
She leaves clues.
She's like, Scooby-Doo's gonna find this one.
So after doing some digging, it turns out that there was a girl named Mary that was murdered, and Mary was trying to spell out her murderer's name in the mirror with a handprint. So that's why this is like a reoccurring thing. And what she spelled out was Trevor. And it turns out that Trevor was this guy that she was having an affair with. And Mary threatened to tell Trevor's wife unless he like divorced her, and so he killed her, essentially.
Dead.
Yeah.
But
it was unsolved though.
Where did the mirror get involved then?
I think he killed her in front of a mirror.
What about that mirror? It's not in some evidence lockup somewhere, is it?
Okay. I remember, like, they talk about, they're like, oh, well, in the olden days, like, people would, like, cover mirrors because they didn't want, like, ghosts getting trapped in them, which I'd be curious if that was actually a folklore belief or anyone actually did that. But that, and we'll get into the nonsense of ghost laws in this series, but sure. So Magic Mary gets trapped in a mirror and is going around with the MO of killing other people who are killers.
Yeah,
the
get away with it. The get away with murder because her
Sure.
killer got away with murder.
Sure.
And so the blonde girl, back to the blonde girl, Charlie, she's at school with the dead dad's daughter, Donna, I think. And
the dead dad's daughter, Donna.
Dead dad's daughter, Donna. And she tells her the theory of Bloody Mary. And the girl's like, this is dumb. And so she says...
This is dumb, dead daughter, Donna.
She says...
Or dead daddy daughter, Donna.
She says Bloody Mary in the school bathroom 3 times in front of Charlie. And Charlie, like, freaks out. And she's in class and she sees Bloody Mary in, like, the reflection of a knife. And then
I thought it was in, like, her makeup
Oh, in her
compact.
makeup compact. Oh, yeah, that's what it was. So she sees it. I thought it was like
because it's like
knife.
following her. Because I think it's like one point she like sees it in the mirror and then like a
she sees it in like
reflection
a window and she breaks the window like
Yeah.
she's gone ape shit. And so
She like runs home and calls Sam or Dean.
yeah, she calls them and she's like, I need you to get here because someone said Bloody Mary while I was present and now it's coming to get me, right? And so Charlie,
I want to know how far Bloody Mary will travel. Like, is she
everywhere?
Well, like if you went to Kentucky, like would she
no,
follow you?
They said that. Oh, I don't know. Well, they said that the whole reason that she's in this town is because of the mirror that she died in front of is in this town.
Sure, and if that's her base of operations, that's the
yeah,
object
like what's
she's
the
tied
radius?
to.
Like,
yeah, like I want to know
15 miles
like,
within radius of the mirror.
Yeah, like if I went 3 states away and then looked in a mirror and was like, Bloody Mary, you gonna get me? Huh? No? Cool.
And so Charlie tells Dean and Sam that she had a boyfriend, right? So like, okay, why would Bloody Mary be after her? So she says she has a secret that she had a boyfriend that she loved, but he sometimes scared her. Like he was intense. Love it. Sounds like my type of guy.
Oh.
And they got in a fight and she broke up with him. And the boyfriend said that if she walked out of the door, he would kill himself.
And she's
and
like,
she
good.
said, do it.
I said, go ahead.
And so he did.
He did.
And so he killed himself. I laughed way harder than I should have.
And suicide's not funny.
Not
it's,
at all.
It's the response
Not
of
at
just
all.
like,
She
yeah,
was just like, yeah.
do
And
it.
I said, do it. And I was like, oh my God.
Wow, that's one way to handle that situation.
That's
so
awful. And so then, anyway, Sam's like, okay, we got to keep her protective. They cover all of the mirrors in her house, and there she's like, don't look at anything reflective. And she's like, I can't do this for the rest of my life. And he's like, yeah, I know, I'll figure it out. So Sam's like, he turns to Dean and he's like, I'll summon Bloody Mary because my girlfriend died and it's my fault. And Dean's like, well, I already know that. It's not a secret, so she won't come for you. And he's like, well, actually, I do have a secret, but I haven't told you. And he's like, okay.
Was the secret that he had been having nightmares leading?
getting into
I'm
that.
sorry.
Yes. So the secret,
Did
Sam's
you know
secret.
I didn't know what the secret was. That's why I was seeing if
Yeah.
that was the
So
secret.
Sam's secret is that he dreamt it before it happened. He had premonitions of it happening before it actually happened. So he could have therefore prevented it or told her about it, Anyway, so they go to a place where there's a bunch of mirrors and the mirror is there.
Yeah, like it had been sold to
tracked
this
it down.
antique store,
Mhm.
and then it's there in line for them to come and get
Essentially.
at night.
And so they break in and they're like, all right, I'm going to say Bloody Mary 3 times in front of the mirror. And he starts to, but then Dean, the cops show up and Dean's like, okay, I'm going to go distract them. You keep doing it. If you see anything, smash it. So of course he says it and then she shows up. And so he starts smashing all these mirrors and he goes to smash hers last because that's the last one she shows up in. But Sam sees his own reflection and then he sees the blood coming out of his eyes and Sam's reflection is talking to himself and he's like, it's your fault that she's dead. You saw her die, blah, 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 blah. And then Dean comes in and saves the day and he smashes the mirror.
Well,
so Sam's okay temporarily.
But you just missed the fact that Dean
Oh,
punched
he
two
punches
cops.
cops, yeah.
Yeah, he comes out and it's almost clever because he's like, hey, sorry, I tripped the alarm. My bad.
I'm the
And then they're
owner's
like,
kid.
Yeah, they're like, who are you? He's like, I'm the owner's kid.
And the owner's like Asian.
He's like
and
Mr.
he's
Yamasura,
like-
and he's like,
I'm adopted.
and then they're
he
like,
literally
yeah, we're,
says, I'm adopted.
Like I said, I was adopted.
like, we're gonna like call this in. He's like, I don't have time for this, and he just
Punches them out.
2 police officers.
It's fine.
That's
Violence is fine.
And then he runs in and saves.
Yeah, he saves
Sammy.
Sam by smashing Bloody Mary's Mary Bloody her mirror, and she ends up crawling out of it and then attacks them both. So now they're both dying, which doesn't make sense. Why would she go after Dean? Because Dean doesn't have a secret, or is it just like,
Right?
You pissed me off, I'm gonna kill you?
But okay, and we'll get into ghost logic and ghost rules in this, and that's why this episode pisses me off, because none of it, if you accept a lot of premises, none of the ghost logic makes sense.
They don't correlate. Yeah.
At all. But anyway,
so then they're both dying and they're bleeding from their eyes. And Dean grabs a mirror that was on the floor next to him, coincidentally, and holds it up in front of Bloody Mary. So she sees her reflection, and then her reflection is talking to her. And so she's like, you killed all these people, it's your fault. And so she melts and explodes.
like she turns into...
She like reverse psychologied herself.
She turns into weird like pink goo, which is just hilarious and not like climactic at all. Like all of a sudden she is seeing the ghost reflection
Of herself.
Assigning of vengeance, and then therefore like can't handle the paradox, so she just melts into goo.
Yes, and I put so defeated with reverse psychology ? Dumb.
Yeah.
Literally what I wrote.
Because I thought like somehow he was going to show her the mirror, and then she sees herself in the reflection and then
And
gets
she
trapped in
sees what
that
she's
mirror,
become,
and
or-
then he
oh.
was going to like smash
So
that.
I thought she was gonna like see what she's become and be like, sorry.
Either option is a better way to write it than somehow she has like made herself guilty and therefore is going to kill herself. I don't know.
So it ends with Dean being like, hey, you gonna tell me your secret? And Sam's like, nah. The end.
But we know.
You're such a freak. I'll call you tomorrow.
And that was lengthy. God, that was rough.
All right. How many spirits would you give this episode?
2.
I
2.5.
I was really hoping you were going to do higher, because then I was going to be like, I give it 3. And I thought I was
2.
going to be even lower than yours, because you always yell at me for doing like 1 higher.
2.
I 2 or 3.
I give it 2 Bloody Marys with celery.
You would need a lot of Bloody Marys to deal with this episode.
It's not good.
I don't like supernatural ghosts, and the more I see episodes with them, the more I just have huge faults. Because
You mean rewatch? Because
Sure.
I've watched this by myself.
Yeah.
You've watched it by yourself.
Yes.
So yeah.
But we've gone over, I think this is the 4th episode of Supernatural with a ghost, and each time they have varying
It
degrees.
doesn't make sense.
No, there is no consistency. So you had the woman in white, and various times she could teleport, sometimes become tactile, sometimes possess people, and then gets like dragged to hell. But she was also, I
By
think,
her
cremated.
kids. Yeah.
And so it's like, okay,
Yeah.
okay, if you're cremated, I thought you couldn't be a spirit because, okay, but sometimes you can attach to things. So there's all these caveats. And then with H.H. Holmes, it didn't make any sense because he could somehow drag people through walls at times,
and like
also
feel them
become
up.
Yeah. Sometimes he was intangible, sometimes he wasn't. And then there was the water spirit that, again, kind of like Bloody Mary, had this ability to transport itself
Oh, the goopy.
through
yeah.
great distances through the water, and Bloody Mary could travel through
Different
reflections,
mirrors.
but not just mirrors.
Yeah.
It'd be one thing as if it was even just mirrors. It's anything with a reflective surface.
So shiny.
So then the issue becomes again, okay, well, what's the limitation? If it was a really foggy mirror, could she do it? If it was a really muddy water with some reflection, could she travel through that?
What about cell phones?
And yeah, like, so, what about a selfie? Does that count? I don't know.
If I'm checking myself out of my camera, can she?
Yeah, like, can
come
all of a
there?
sudden she, like, pop up out of nowhere?
Hello.
So, and they had mentioned she also was cremated. So, what is it? Like,
What are the rules?
so she is, and I understand, like, she is her spirit is bound to this mirror, and that's how she is able to persist in this mortal realm. Sure, but that doesn't explain why some ghosts are superpowered and some are just like, then there's also like run-of-the-mill ghosts, I'm assuming, that like don't cause a lot of trouble, but they're not really differentiated. Like, I think later they do experience a poltergeist, but I would consider these poltergeists, not just spirits, because they're pretty vengeful, pretty angry.
They've literally killed people.
They're murdering people. So I thought this episode was just
awful,
boring. I thought it was
I don't know. I don't think it was as bad as the airplane episode. I really hated that one.
Oh, see, I didn't mind that because at least it was demons, and like I can kind of accept that there is like, for demons, like there's at least like some logic. Like they have to possess a person. To do that, the person has to kind of be weakened. They enter like through their orifices, and sure, but then you're kind of bound to this. But I think that another issue is just the CW budget with shows like this.
It was old, though.
I know, and I know it's the first season, so they're not going to throw a huge amount of money, but it's this idea of, okay, what monster can we do with almost no makeup or CGI? Well, we'll just have a ghost that looks exactly like a person. Like Bloody Mary just looked like
the Ring Girl.
And that was another thing. It was like, this was just kind of a weird copy of The Ring, which would have made a little bit more sense if this was like a Japanese spirit or an Oni, but it's like, no, it's just some girl. But it like comes out of the mirror like The Ring.
Creepy and
it does that weird kind of edit where it's like,
thing.
Yeah, where it's, you remember like Scarlet Witch in Age of Ultron did that?
Yeah.
I hate that. And I don't hate it because it like creeps me out. I hate it because I think it looks dumb.
I'll let them know.
Oh, good. You let Joss Whedon know. Why did you do that? I'm glad you didn't keep doing that with Scarlet Witch. So yeah, I think this first season is definitely one that there are some, I'm not even gonna say hits, because I don't think even in the first 5 episodes I've been like, yeah, that was just a amazing home run of an episode. Like they were finding their feet, but this one in particular does not do anything.
It was bad.
No, and it comes down to just the universe. If you're going to world build, you need a little bit more set rules about what the limitations and what these spirits can do. And I'm not saying like, therefore, you can't have spirits that break that, but they don't have that in this. Like they're not establishing like, oh, this spirit's so different from all the other ones we've faced. It's like, well, no, you also have Waterboy that, floats through sinks. Okay, H.H. Holmes, like just can go through walls and pull people through walls.
And yeah.
All right, so let's move on to Behind the Screen. You have to let me finish before you do this. Anyway.
I'm gonna make you scream.
Oh, God. This episode originally aired on October 11th, 2005. This was directed by Peter Ellis, who would also go on to direct another episode called The Benders. I believe that is also another episode I don't care for, because I don't think it has anything supernatural. It's just like a bunch of hicks that hunt people.
Oh, I was thinking it was like bendy elastic people. That would have been interesting.
I wish it was about Bender the robot from Futurama and a bunch of him, because that episode would be amazing. But it's not. This was written by Ron Milbauer and Terry Hughes Burton. Both of them were actually consulting producers for Witches of East End.
Great show.
And Ron was also a producer for Handmaid's Tale.
Also a great show.
And yet not a well-written episode. And I feel like they could have done better for this. But that's mostly because I think they wrote teenage girls terribly.
Whoever they were cute.
Yeah.
Jill was played by Shaylon Simmons, who was actually Brandy in How I Met Your Mother. I don't know if you remember her. She's in like 3 episodes in like the 8th season. I just like watched those episodes. I was like,
who's Brandy?
She's a random girl that Barney wants to hook up with. One of the 200 or so.
Oh, like the really hot one that like turns him down, like she's hard to get.
It doesn't matter. Okay. My point is, you've seen her before.
Cool.
You don't remember it.
Go me.
I didn't hear this, and I was even looking, but this episode featured Sugar We're Going Down Swinging by Fall Out Boy.
No.
It
I would have heard that.
It did. I don't know where.
Maybe
I will
it was...
try and find it when I'm editing this and add it in to prove. But yes, it is in there. I don't have the information definitely in front of me.
Maybe it was when I was like, the blonde girl was listening to music, and I was like, this is way too hardcore for her.
No, I listened, and that it wasn't.
I know that wasn't it,
Fall
but
Out
I didn't know
Boy.
if it was like while they were having their conversation.
Maybe, but I believe From Under the Cork Tree came out in 2005. So I think it would have been like a new song for like the time, like probably like a hit at that point. But we were both old Fall Out Boy fans. I can't speak for new Fall Out Boy, but that was my jam back in 2005.
I still like some new.
Yeah. Series creator Eric Kripke is actually from a small town in northwestern Ohio called Sylvania. It's a small suburb of Toledo, and this episode takes place in Toledo, Ohio.
I love his last name, by the way.
Kripke.
It's like so cool.
So he does a lot of little nods to Toledo, Ohio in a lot of episodes. Like in the pilot, we didn't go over this, but the Woman in White is on Centennial Road, and Centennial is actually one of the longest, most well-known roads in Sylvania. So a little nod to his hometown. It would have been more fun if they had a weird Dracula episode.
Right?
I know they have a fun... I do want to cover it. They have one of my favorite episodes is they do it in black and white, and they go to Pennsylvania during Oktoberfest, and it's like they experience a shapeshifter.
I don't remember that
being
one.
like classic monsters.
That's cool.
It's amazing.
We'll get there.
Bloody Mary kills Jill, we talked about, and she talks about Gary Bryman. The real life Gary Bryman is actually he produced 4 films that were written or directed by Eric Kripke.
Oh, I thought it was Carrie. It was Gary?
It was apparently Gary Bryman.
Oh, okay. I thought it was... My bad.
It's okay.
You know who that is?
No.
So, yeah, fun little tidbits there. But now it's time to get to...
The truth.
Much as you try to bury it, the truth is out there.
So, Bloody Mary, where does it come from? It kind of has a long and winding history, so I'm going to start way back in ancient Greece.
Ooh.
So sick people visiting temples would be instructed to look into a mirror. If a healthy-looking apparition stared back at them, they could expect a swift recovery.
They were sick, of course. What?
An apparition. So, like, you would see your reflection, and then, like, an apparition would appear next to you or behind you.
I was like, of course they would
No.
all look sick.
No, an apparition. But if an apparition appeared that was ghoulish, meant their days were numbered.
Ooh.
In Edwardian England, women would perform what were called love divination rituals, hoping to name or see the face of their future husband.
That's something I would totally do.
These were parlor games for young single individuals, and they were performed most especially on certain days of the year because that's when the magic the spirit realm had the most power.
Sure. You got to do it on full moon.
Or specifically on the New Year, like New Year's Day, St. Agnes's Eve, which is January 20th.
Oh, that's interesting.
St. Valentine's Day, makes sense.
Yeah.
Midsummer, and of course our favorite, Halloween. So those particular dates had a lot of potency, especially the time of day, and midnight was the most powerful, apparently, for these love divination rituals. So there were a lot of different games or rituals that they would conduct to do
I'm
these.
so curious. I want to do it. I mean, I already know who I'm going to marry. Or did.
So to a couple of the I'll call them rituals. I don't want to call them games. This is very serious stuff.
Yeah. No, totally.
So to meet your future wife or husband, you would count 7 stars in the sky on 7 successive nights, and on the 8th day, the first person whom you shake hands with would be your wife or your husband.
Oh my God, we should have done this.
What? Another ritual requires guests to go outdoors, pluck a strand of hair from their head, and let it go. The direction in which the strand blows indicates the direction which their future husband or wife lives.
Well, that's stupid because wind.
For divination to work properly, the following words must be recited. I pluck this lock of hair off my head to tell whence comes the one I shall wed.
Or bed.
Fly, silken hair, fly all the world around until you reach the spot where my true love is found.
That's cute.
Very cute. And then the last and most important one is young women would walk up a flight of stairs backwards, holding a candle and a hand mirror in a darkened house.
This sounds dangerous.
As they gazed into the mirror, they were supposed to be able to catch a view of their future husband's face. There was a chance, however, they would see a skull instead, indicating they were going to die before they would have a chance to marry.
Oh my god.
So essentially you would see like the face of the Grim Reaper, and that was kind of an indication that's like, you're never gonna marry because you're gonna be dead.
I would just marry the next random person I meet. Just be like, hey, I'm dying, so let's do this. Bed me.
So then fast forward to modern day Bloody Mary. So how did you ever do Bloody Mary?
No.
No?
I've never done it, and me being the stupid, superstitious person
You'd
that
be
I
scared?
am, I won't do it.
No?
No, I'm not gonna do it.
Okay. But you would...
Because for me, it's not about saying words or whatever. It's about the intention behind it. And so you can say fruitcake, 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 but if you're thinking of calling an evil spirit and you're opening yourself up to that, it is highly possible that could happen.
Did you know about...
Yeah. I knew.
So
I just refuse. I would not participate.
Did anyone, did you ever have an opportunity?
Yeah.
Oh, so, you at least, went to, slumber parties or parties or wherever?
Yes.
So what version did you, know? What was the instructions?
Bloody Mary and the 3 times in the mirror in the dark.
And then what would happen?
That she would appear.
And then...
That's all. I
that
just
was
said
it?
she would appear.
Oh, okay.
I didn't even want that.
So... I also knew it. You would turn off all the lights,
mm-hmm.
and then you would say 3 times Bloody Mary. I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna.
Don't do
I'm
it.
not in front of a mirror, but I'm not gonna.
You're in
risk
front of
it.
the TV. You can see
Apparently,
reflection.
There's some reflection. So yeah, 3 for me was very specific in the number of what you would call, and the darkened room was very specific.
Mm-hmm.
There are some that say you can do it between 3 and 13. Or you would have to do it all the way up to 13. I think that's a little absurd.
That's a lot. I'd be like...
I'd be like, what am I on? Am I on 10? 10 millimeters? I don't know. That's a lot. But some would say it would have to be dimly lit or candle lit. I
always heard in the dark.
I always heard in the dark as well. But, a specific number of times, I think most probably would agree with 3, especially in modern. Apparently, Bloody Mary would then appear as a corpse, a witch, or a ghost. Some versions say she would be friendly or evil, sometimes seen covered in blood, hence the name. I don't think whenever I heard it, the description, I don't think a description was ever given.
Mm-hmm.
I never imagined, a bloody person would come. I thought, Bloody Mary was just kind of, I don't know, just a name. I never thought, a bloody corpse would appear. Personally, I maybe others did think that, but if she appeared, the lore states that she would possibly scream or curse the individual, strangle them, steal their soul, drink their blood, or scratch their eyes out, like in this episode. Mm-hmm. So that's where some of that came from. I had never heard of the eye gouging, eye scratching, eye exploding, but that is part of some versions of the myth. And also, there's some variations where sometimes you would call Hell Mary or Mary Worth other than Bloody Mary.
Oh, okay.
So there's some variations on that. So the question is, who was Bloody Mary?
Who's Bloody Mary?
She's this witch.
I heard she was a lady killed in a car crash.
It doesn't matter who she is.
Do you know, what might have inspired Bloody Mary?
Jesus' mother.
That would... is she bloody because she was holding Jesus?
She gave birth.
Oh, my goodness. There's a number of theories. I think one is probably a stronger contender than the other. So I'm gonna go with what I think personally the least likely to most likely.
That was a joke, by the way, about Jesus' mom. I don't actually think that.
Nope, that's number one. Elizabeth Bathory, who was a 17th century Hungarian countess. You might know of her. She would allegedly, according to some legends, bathe in the blood of
her enemies. That's amazing.
It was more like servant women that she slaughtered and kidnapped.
Oh, why'd she do that?
Well, we'll do a whole episode at some point, but it's likely if she did some of that she was probably under some sort of mental duress, or
I think bathing in blood, not a good sign.
Well, but she is a lot of times you'll hear, she's been said to be a vampire or is tied to vampiric lore. Some say that maybe Dracula was partly inspired by her. It's hard to say, but the blood relation is possibly an inspiration for Bloody Mary. But again, not named Mary at all. So other than kind of the alleged bloodbaths, there's not much connection there.
Okay.
Mary Worth is another one, and that's where that variation of calling her Mary Worth or Hell Mary or Bloody Mary. So she killed slaves who were trying to escape the American South through the Underground Railroad.
That's not okay.
Or there was another Mary Worth that was burned at the stake during the witch trials. So there's two Mary Worths.
Again, not okay. Either one.
Well, being an innocent victim of a witch trial and being a terrible person of, murdering slaves that were trying to better themselves is, I think, a lot worse.
Yeah.
And then the most, I'm not going to say widely accepted, but probably like widely agreed upon probable inspiration was Mary of England. I think Mary the First of England, also known as Mary Tudor. She was the daughter of Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon, and she killed about 300 religious dissenters and had them all burned at the stake. And she had the nickname Bloody Mary.
Why did she kill these people?
There's a really long English history lesson between Catholicism and Protestantism and the Church of England, and it's really kind of boring.
So she got her crazy from her dad.
Probably. She killed a lot of people and got that nickname, so that's why a lot of people think, like, even if it's just by name alone, the name Bloody Mary then turned into this evil apparition, and it kind of grew from there.
That's fair.
So, I mean, between those 3 or 4, what do you have any thoughts on the matter?
I mean, I'd say that the one who killed like 300 people, that would be the most relevant.
Yeah, I mean, I think just name alone, Mary Tudor is probably, and has like pretty widely been agreed of like, it's probably the inspiration for Bloody Mary. But I think there's also, something to be said about a mixture of parlor or love divination rituals that kind of went from, ominous harbingers or omens you see in a mirror, then kind of got tied to this specific figure. And then now even today you kind of have this idea of parlor games, if you will, just done in a very different setting of sleepovers. So that's, where it's fascinating.
Yeah, how things evolve.
Yeah. So moving on to I Want to Believe. Now I'm a believer. Do you believe in Bloody Mary? I think you kind of do.
I think you kind of do, man. Yeah.
Or at least I
don't think I believe in Bloody Mary per se, but I believe that you could call a spirit by saying that and opening yourself. Oh, like you're opening yourself. Not necessarily like Bloody Mary will show up herself, whoever that is. I don't think that, but I do think that if you invoke a spirit, if you're willingly inviting a spirit, then something can show up.
In the same way of like using a Ouija board may not necessarily be about it. It's not about the board. The board itself.
It's about the intent.
Yeah, you would say like with a Ouija board, like you don't necessarily think that people dicking around on a Ouija board, like if they weren't trying to call a spirit but just like freak each other out, that's not going to do it. But if you go with the intention of trying to summon something, you can open a doorway.
Mm-hmm. And my
Got
mom
it.
has a Ouija board story that maybe we'll share on another day.
Dun dun dun.
Guest star.
I don't know if I buy Ouija boards, but I would tend to think that it's a little bit more psychological in nature. So,
Oh, true, for sure. I mean, you could trick yourself into seeing something easily.
Yeah,
I do it all the time.
So, and pretty much, if you're in a dimly lit room,
Your eyes play tricks on you.
Yeah, or you're completely in the dark. You're in there a while, especially if you're, you want to kind of psych yourself up, because that's kind of the fun of it. Is you want to scare yourself often when you're doing this. And if you're in the dark for a long period of time, you start to hallucinate. You're looking at a mirror, and facial features can kind of melt.
Well, yeah,
or
you're
distort.
constantly looking for a face too. That's been scientifically proven.
Yeah.
That we look for faces in objects.
Yeah, and so I fully believe that, like, you have this mixture of kind of this mindset of wanting to see something, so your brain will then supply that because you also have limited visual stimuli, and therefore then you start to hallucinate, and then you're in this great mindset of, like, you want to see something, so your brain is then like, hey, there's something, and then now you freak yourself out, and boom, Bloody Mary has appeared before you. I don't know, I think it's hard to say, what specific. I think it would depend on the person for me to necessarily buy that, like, anyone playing Bloody Mary could summon a malevolent or a spirit. I don't know if I quite would go that far, but I could understand, like, some people, if they were not necessarily trying to do that, could maybe do that. But I think it's a little bit more psychological, and it's a little bit more physiological of just your brain doing weird things to you in the dark.
In the dark. Speaking of Fall
Yeah,
Out Boy.
yeah, I got it. You never asked me if I played Bloody Mary.
Oh, well, have you?
Yes.
Did you?
Yeah, I did.
Did anything happen?
I don't remember. I honestly, I don't think anything did.
Who'd you
feel
play
like,
with?
I had some friends at a sleepover.
Was it in this house?
Yeah, it was in that bathroom.
Oh, God.
Dun dun dun.
I mean, it's been redone, so the spirit has been cleaned out.
Or not, maybe. So, I'd be curious on, if others have played Bloody Mary. We're, between our sample size, one of us has played and not seen anything, the other hasn't. So,
the other's a giant chicken.
So, if you have played, if you have seen something, or, you did summon something, I'd be very curious on, what your stories are. Or do you think it's bunk? What do you think it actually inspired Bloody Mary? Is there maybe someone else that we missed? But as always, we love sharing our stories, sharing these fun, anecdotes about where some of these monsters and myths came from. And next time we're going to be almost lined up for Friday the 13th.
Yay! Also, side note, happy Walpurgisnacht tomorrow, April 30th. Probably when you're listening to this, maybe.
If I can edit this quick enough.
Happy halfway to Halloween.
Yeah, so tune in next time. We are going to be covering the original Friday the 13th. We're going to try and release it on Friday the 13th.
And spoilers, guys, it's my first time seeing it.
Yay. All right, we'll catch you next time.
Bye.